it's amazing to see, fans obviously out there. And it's a home field advantage for us.
You are now tuned into Homefield Advantage with your hosts, the GM, Justice General Radford, the Caveman, Michael Lisman. Enjoy.
What is going on, everybody? It is the Caveman. I am here, met with Kendall for Homefield Advantage. Justice may be joining us a little later on, but it's going to be a great show. We have a little bit to talk about. I'm not going to sit here and act like we have a plethora because the offseason is extremely boring, but we are going to make do. There's always conversation to be had, especially with such a smart guy like Kendall, so we'll be able to knock this out of the park. So how you doing tonight, Kendall?
Yeah, not bad. Definitely been taking some time off from content creation, at least relative to draft season, where I was on seemingly 5 nights a week. But yeah, no, it's nice kind of getting to that dead point in the off season. It's nice for me to get that time off, but also kind of like reassess some things like holistically about the NFL, kind of take a step back and not have such a narrow sight on the Bills, but also take a step back and think about how every team has changed a little bit and who's getting better, who might have gotten worse, who might have just stagnated, stayed the same, and kind of reassess like the landscape of the NFL. It's hard to do that sometimes as a Bills content creator where you're just constantly honed in on your own team. But I think this time where there's not a lot to talk about when you're just talking about one team, it really helps give you that like forest amongst the trees kind of component where you're seeing, oh, okay, there's a lot more going on outside of just the Buffalo Bills around here that also impacts the Buffalo Bills. So it's been nice to kind of take a break, take a step back, and also reassess the league.
Oh, totally. And I mean, everything might not directly impact the Bills, but everything trickles down, all these contract extensions that go on around us, all these guys getting signed, traded, everything will probably somehow impact us in one way or another. Robbie, what's going on, man? Happy to see you in the comment section. Hope you're having a great night. Anybody, if you're in the comment section, definitely leave a hello, leave any thoughts, any questions you might have. We will definitely be bouncing off of you guys. If you guys have any questions or thoughts, we'll be happy to get you guys involved in the conversation. But we're going to kick things off with some recent news, and we're going to rewind the clock a little bit back to, I think it was a week ago now, maybe a week and a half. The Bills did sign Tavon Austin. I know it's been talked about a little bit, but we wanted to get together and touch on this as well. Do you see a path to the roster for Tavon Austin, in your opinion?
The toughest thing about Tavon Austin making the roster is the plethora of slot wide receivers that the Bills have on the roster. It is ridiculous how many slot options the Bills have when it comes to Jamison Crowder, Isaiah McKenzie, Khalil Shakir, now Tavon Austin. If Isaiah Hodgins makes the team, I think a lot of people are considering him a big slot at this point. I mean, if Tavon Austin makes the team, I think it's going to be because of two things. It's going to be because he's just really good. He's showing that he's, first off, good enough to make the team at a great position on this team. Secondly, he's going to have to show versatility, not only playing in the slot, but also someone that can operate on the outside, because Bills don't have a lot of outside depth behind Davis and Diggs. So he's got to show a little bit of that. And thirdly, probably most important, honestly, I probably should have listed this first, kick and punt return. If he wins the kick and punt return job, I think that's how he's making the roster. And whether this is a hot take or not, like it really, if he makes the roster, like what does this mean for Isaiah McKenzie? That's the weirdest thing about what's happened this offseason. Yes. They keep investing at slot wide receiver, and it's not necessarily an indictment on Isaiah McKenzie, because we saw last year that McKenzie can do some stuff with those opportunities in the slot, but they're clearly not wholeheartedly confident considering the amount of investment, not necessarily like high level spending, but the quantity of how many players they're getting at that position. They really want to throw every bit of competition at Isaiah McKenzie's way, and cream rises to the top. If he's the best, he's the best, and he'll make the team. Even if he's the second best, he'll probably make the team out of those four guys. But I don't know. It's tough. Like, I really like Khalil Shakir. I think Jamison Crowder, I don't think he's going to be a whole complete replacement to Cole Beasley. What I've been saying is he's going to be like 80% of what Cole Beasley was at a fraction of the cost. So I'm down with that. But for him to beat out Khalil Shakir and Jamison Crowder, I find that find that really difficult. I think Isaiah McKenzie is in a really difficult situation, but I like the idea of Tavon Austin. But if I'm already talking about how difficult it is for Isaiah McKenzie to make the team, it's going to have to be a kick and punt return if Tavon Austin's going to make this team.
Totally. I mean, everybody's thinking, your initial thought, right, is, the Buffalo Bills, the coaching staff, we've always liked to make things a competitive environment. That's something they've preached ever since Sean McDermott took over, is making sure that everybody has to fight for their job, unless your name is Josh Allen. And I would say, early on, he obviously had to fight for that job too. Yeah. Maybe not too hard, but nevertheless, everybody has competition and everybody has to prove their worth. And that's what Tavon Austin, in theory, is being brought on to do. But I saw a tweet today. I don't remember who put it out. Probably somebody on News 4 or something like that. But they said that Tavon Austin has been impressing in the few days he's been practicing. Obviously, that probably doesn't mean much. Probably doesn't have that much of an impact on what may happen with Tavon Austin's future in the Bills. But the fact that, he's getting praise right now is, something to just keep an eye out for. And I'm so glad you mentioned Isaiah McKenzie, because I feel like this impacts him the most. Like, people say it impacts, maybe like Marquez Stevenson or Khalil Shakir, perhaps. I don't think it impacts Jameson Crowder too much. But, Isaiah McKenzie was the first guy that came to mind when Tavon Austin was signed. And, I guess if there was one guy I would put on the bubble if he were to be making the roster, it would be McKenzie.
Right. And that's the thing that I keep coming back to. But, I mean, to go back to, you already kind of alluded to it, to go back to talking about how he's been praised during this portion of the offseason. Like, sure, it's nice to see that he's picking up the plays and he seems comfortable, and him and whoever's throwing him the football have rapport this early on. All that stuff is good and it's encouraging, but he's running routes against air. He's not really doing anything in live game fashion, and that's not even to downplay who he is as a player, because let's be honest, his college highlights are probably one of the best college highlights of all time. But he still has that in him, but we still need to see what that's like in a Bills uniform in preseason against other opponents, not against, your own teammates, not against air, whatever. I need to see it extrapolated a little bit further. It's encouraging to hear that he's doing well and he's picking it up quickly, but this is a pump the brakes moment where it's already going to be really tough for him to make the team. And it's great to get excited about these camp stories, but it's nothing more than hope and preemptive excitement.
Totally. And, if we were, any other team in the NFL, if we were the Bills 3, 4, 5 years ago, we're probably sitting here and jumping for joy that we signed a name like Tavon Austin. Right. Jason said playing air guitar doesn't make you a good guitar player. Yeah, you're right. Just because you're able to, maybe do it when the competition's not around, obviously it doesn't matter if you're not able to prove it when push comes to shove. But for a guy like Tavon Austin, he has managed to bounce around team to team on a year-to-year basis. It's for somebody that hasn't made too much of a mark in the NFL and comparatively to his college career, he still has managed to play. I was just looking it up now. Every single season since he got in the league, he started with the St. Louis Rams, and obviously he stuck with the Los Angeles Rams when they moved. And he was with Dallas for 2 seasons, and he was with Green Bay, and then he's with Jacksonville. Most of these teams have thin wide receiver rooms, much different than how the Bills are right now. But he hasn't missed a year because he's shown some sort of worth to the teams that he's been brought in by. So who knows? I wouldn't completely shut the door on Tavon Austin just yet. And that's the important thing. I think he definitely is, a name that deserves a shot on this team. And I'd like to see this really push Isaiah McKenzie, if at the worst, if his impact is nothing else.
Yeah, exactly. At the absolute worst, if he doesn't even make the team, it means Isaiah McKenzie was better, and we should be excited about that.
Absolutely. And other than that, there's really nothing else to really juice out of the Tavon Austin signing. We'll see how that all pans out. But the next thing that I did want to touch on recent news-wise was the Deshaun Watson situation, which seems to just continuously grow. It seems like every other day there's some sort of update regarding this guy, and it's getting tiresome, but it's also important because this kind of thing needs to continue to be brought to light, and the spotlight needs to stay on it to continue the awareness being brought to it. So, as annoying as it may come across sometimes, it's extremely important. Do you foresee Deshaun Watson? What is your viewpoint on Deshaun Watson's playing potential going into 2022? Does he miss a year? Does he miss half a year? What are you thinking now?
I mean, at this point with like the whole legal system of it all, like I don't think he's going to be found guilty for anything, which kind of like muddies the actual suspension of it all. But you can do stuff without getting in legal trouble, and the league still can penalize you and apprehend you and do something to suspend you in that way. So I think that's kind of where it's trending with Deshaun Watson. You know, legally in the US legal system, he may not face repercussions, but like the NFL still has a PR to take care of. Like they still have to show that they have good values and they don't want to necessarily condone or support what Deshaun Watson may or may not have done or has not been proven that he's done, whatever the case may be. I think he's still going to get suspended. I'd be very, very shocked if he is playing week 1. If he is, it's like a filibuster reason. It's like for whatever reason, like this thing just gets pushed out. And then all of a sudden, like he's suspended in week 8 for the rest of the season. It's one of those weird situations. But I think it's at least half a season. I think it's probably rightful that he misses the entire season. I can't believe what the Browns are doing, holding Baker Mayfield hostage while this is all happening. It makes absolutely no sense. The whole thing is wild to me. Obviously, like Baker Mayfield, not to go on a tangent, but like Baker Mayfield might be the first player in NFL history that's getting like penalized for playing through an injury.
Yeah, honestly. I mean, for a guy that I think it was the Air 8 Hour guys that tweeted it out, or Judge, because I know he kind of runs the for the most part. But he said, I can't believe Baker Mayfield is not a starting quarterback somewhere right now. I mean, he is not a bottom, no, not bottom, but he's not an outside top 32 quarterback, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Exactly.
So who's going to be the one to swoop in and take him? I guess we'll find out. I wonder what exactly, obviously from the outside, it's hard to pinpoint why Baker hasn't been moved yet. Maybe the Browns are holding on to him, hoping that he will come back. Or maybe they're just driving up the price so high that teams don't want to pay for him. Who knows what they're doing?
It's all weird
against Baker Mayfield. But, at this point in time, he certainly isn't deemed bad enough to not be a starter somewhere. So, if he goes to Carolina,
I hope.
I mean, that's the only spot. That's the crazy thing. It's like, other than Seattle, which seems to be off the table, I really don't know who else would be, wanting to pay whatever, even if it's just a 4th or 5th, to pay for him. I mean, I don't know. I can't think of anybody.
No, at this point, I think those are the 2 teams in the running, and it sounds like Seattle is all in on Drew Lock for whatever reason. I mean, to be fair, I did like Drew Lock coming out of college, but I think everything we've seen so far from him in the NFL says, this guy still needs some development, specifically in his like decision-making processes. It's mostly that. It's not talent. It's not arm strength. It's none of that. It's all the processing and the decision-making of what to do, when to just take a loss, when to just take a net zero, all that kind of stuff. That's the biggest thing with him. But they want to go through the lumps with him. They want to, use him as the bridge quarterback to the next year's draft, whatever it is. Maybe they're tanking for Stroud or the other guy whose name is escaping me in the draft, because apparently this is going to be a good quarterback draft next year. But I think Carolina is the home. Apparently they did a big push for him, but who knows? Maybe the Browns are trying to hold out, keep that price really, really high, like you were saying, because in the back of their minds, they're like, we don't know what's going on with Deshaun and we want this insurance policy. But is Baker even going to come back, even if that's the case?
I'd like to think not. I mean, if I'm Baker Mayfield, there's no chance in hell I'm going back and playing for the Browns.
Right.
I mean, I thought obviously he sucked. He was horrible. I mean, it got to a point where, even it wasn't just his physical capabilities that were holding him back. He was just making flat out awful decisions on a consistent basis. Like, he was just affected. His game was affected that much. And I do blame the injury for that, even though it was mental, that the mental side of the game that really started to get the best of him at points. But, a guy like Baker Mayfield, he doesn't strike me as a pushover, I guess, for lack of a better term. Like, he's not going to be desperate enough. I think he knows he's got enough self-worth to realize that he doesn't need the Browns as much as the Browns are going to need him at the point of Deshaun Watson's suspension. So he's in a very comfortable, I'd say he's in a very comfortable spot right now, because he knows he can flip the bird to the Browns, and they will eventually have to move him for something, and he'll be able to get another starting opportunity. He will never get another job in the NFL. I mean, even if he misses the entire year, he will still train. He will still be prepared. He will get a job in 2023.
Yeah, he absolutely should. He's deserving of it. Yeah, the air raid guys obviously put it out. He's in my mind, he is safely top 32 quarterback. I think the argument of him being a top 20 quarterback, I think I'd still take him as a top 20 quarterback despite everything that's happened. People forget his rookie year, people forget the year after that because of everything that's happened in the past couple of years. He is a solid starting quarterback. He is not a world beater, but he is a solid starting quarterback that you can win with and sometimes win because he's a great competitor. I don't know if he's fully a win because of quarterback, but he is somewhere in between those two, which tells me he's probably creeping towards top 15, top 16 range, but I don't know if he's quite there. But either way, it's baffling.
Yeah, it is. And Jason asks a question, Houston for Baker. Oof. I mean, I guess it all depends on your viewpoint of Davis Mills. I think Davis Mills deserves a fair shot. That's just me. He showed enough to me that he deserves a fair shot. Like I said, I don't know how much they're holding, Baker Mayfield's ransom for, but do you think taking in Houston's position, at least, is taking Baker Mayfield necessarily a benefit to them if that were an option?
I think it's a benefit to them in terms of QB play. I think they would be getting better QB play, but I think in terms of where they are as a franchise, I think it makes more sense to ride out whatever it is that you have with Davis Mills. Right. And it's not to say that Davis Mills was a great quarterback, but he showed flashes of real competency at the position for a rookie, especially in terms of like his cerebral nature of playing the position. He's not a prime athlete or anything like that, but he's athletic enough to improvise if he has to. And the big difference is obviously Baker Mayfield's coming up on an extension. I think he's in the 5th year option right now. So you have a decision to make after this year if he were to go to Houston, whereas Davis Mills, you got 3 more years of rookie quarterback. So you kind of just want to ride that out and evaluate that rather than take the chance on a guy who's probably marginally better than him, but how much is that marginal difference and is it worth it? And then will you even want to pay him? So I think it makes more sense for the Texans in that situation to just ride out whatever they have with Davis Mills. And I never thought I would say that because the whole time they drafted Davis Mills and he was doing pretty solid stuff for them last year. I was like, man, they are in purgatory. Like they are in Bills level purgatory where they got competent QB play and they don't want to let it up. Or are they going to have to pay it? Are they going to waste a draft pick on a new quarterback instead of all of these other holes on the team? Like it reminds me of Billsy stuff from the drought.
Oh, totally. I mean, it is like, we had bad quarterback play, but we were never obviously bad enough. We were stuck in the worst of it. We were never bad enough to have a top 3, top 5, top 8 pick, even for the most part. But we were stuck right in the middle, getting a 12th to 15th, 16th, 17th choice. It's like, I mean, God forbid we ever got a top selection. That's what keeps you stuck in the niche of mediocrity for so long, is being continuously mediocre. And then you get stuck and not really getting the proper capital that you really need, I would say, to rebuild your team. Vince asked, where's the big guy? Vince, nice to see you in. Justice, I'm not sure what he's doing. He joined for like 5 seconds before the show and he was outside. So I don't know what Justice is up to right now, but he might be joining later on. But getting back on track, one question I did want to ask you, slightly going back to the Drew Lock conversation. Would you have started, if you were Vic Fangio, Drew Lock over Teddy Bridgewater prior to 2021 beginning? Would you have named him the starter?
I wanted to say yes for development purposes, but you don't want to lose the locker room. And I think that's probably the reason that he went with Teddy, because he knows Teddy's the better quarterback. He knows what he's going to get out of Teddy, and the team, the players, they all know what they're going to get out of Teddy. So I think to a sense, you lose the locker room to, why are we playing someone that doesn't give us as good of a chance to win right now? So I think from a save your butt situation and, you don't want to get fired, all that kind of stuff, like you're doing what's best for the team right now, it makes sense for Teddy. But for the future, if like where the Broncos were as a team and they had a great roster, but it wasn't complete because that quarterback position wasn't complete, hence them going out and getting Russ this offseason. that's why you kind of just bite the bullet and you're like, yeah, this might not be the best thing for the team right now, but it's the best thing for the franchise moving forward to evaluate this guy. And honestly, I could be wrong in this case because not putting negative Drew Lock tape out there last year could have benefited them in terms of getting him as part of the package to Russell Wilson in that trade. So it goes both ways, but I feel like he probably made the right decision in terms of saving the locker room, saving his butt, all that kind of stuff, because you don't want to start someone that's inferior to someone else because you lose the camaraderie and the loyalty of that locker room.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perspective that I genuinely haven't heard, to be honest, because when Jason asked Locker Bridgewater, does it really matter?
Right.
Probably not. In the grand scheme of things. The reason why I asked is because when that announcement was made, because it was somewhat of a surprise at the time, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was kind of.
It came out and people were like, okay, that's a little bit interesting. But to me, my perspective was, we all knew that the Broncos were a quarterback away. That's been the conversation with Denver for at least a year now. Yeah. And Drew Lock was going into his third season, and you have a kid that I feel like you really didn't know exactly what you had in him. The third year is supposed to be the year whether or not you find out. And with Teddy Bridgewater, at least to me, I do have like a little bit of a negative bias against Teddy Bridgewater, just because
really? Okay.
you know what you're getting with Teddy Bridgewater, and it is capped off at mediocrity. Like and that's exactly what happened. When they go 7-10. I mean, I think that was the
something like that. Yeah.
It's like, exactly what you're getting. And sometimes it's fine. They didn't have the roster didn't turn out to be good enough to, hold them over Teddy Bridgewater's mediocrity. But, at least with Drew Lock, this was just the way I was thinking about it at the time. You don't know. I mean, he could start you out 0-3 instead of 3-0. And suddenly you can go back to Teddy in that instance, but
right. And that's why I thought it could have been what you have in Teddy. So it's like, if the Drew Lock thing doesn't work out, then you still have your guy Teddy just waiting. So yeah, right. That was the one thought that was like, I definitely vibe with that.
Yeah. And you can't go from, and obviously it didn't get to a point where they were like, okay, Teddy's been so bad, we need to go back to Drew Lock. But hypothetically, if they found themselves in that situation, it's like, how do you go back to Drew Lock after deciding he wasn't good enough to start the year, who was supposed to start the year in the first place?
Right.
Yeah, that was a debacle that I found interesting. But I mean, you make a very fair point. The locker room could have been, looking at Teddy as that leader throughout all of training camp, OTAs. He probably developed that rapport in that locker room to begin with. Obviously, that decision wasn't made on a whim, and we can't determine that from the outside.
Not to ruffle any gills, but I wonder if that happens to the Dolphins this year with Teddy backing up Tua.
Ooh, that will be interesting. What are your thoughts on Tua? Do you think I did mention to you I was going to spew out a couple of hot takes. Here's one.
All right,
I think Tua has a top 12 quarterback season statistically. He doesn't improve talent-wise. He doesn't show put anything on tape that makes you think, wow, he's actually really improved. He just has a season kind of Jimmy Garoppolo-esque, right? I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo, I think he was 12th in the NFL in passing yards this year because of the talent he has around him. I think he threw 20 and 12. He wasn't great, but he had statistics to back up the fact that, he was statistically a top 12 quarterback. So I could see Tua falling in that range.
I think it's a stretch. I think it's a bit of a stretch. A big reason that I'm thinking that is honestly kind of their investment into the running back position this offseason. They have like 4 good running backs right now, which kind of tells me that they want to run the football a little bit more. But I think it's fair. I think it's fair that Tua will have a solid season. Obviously, getting Tyreek Hill is going to help. Bringing back Mike Gesicki is going to help. All of that stuff is going to help. And I think Bills fans just think Tua is way worse than he actually is. I don't think Tua is a great quarterback. I think he is a good quarterback. I think of him in a similar vein to Baker Mayfield, probably a little bit better than Baker Mayfield. But I think about them in similar veins where, the team has kind of done them a disservice where I feel like they could be better than where they currently are. Obviously, Tua has some injury stuff where it was leaking from college to the pros, where Baker has some injury stuff where it's on the back end of his so far relative to his pro career. But either way, I think that's a fair take. I think Tua could have a good breakout statistical year. I think in terms of his talent, I don't want to say he's capped because I don't think we've fully seen what he can do, because I don't think he's had an offense that's allowed him to show what he can do. His offensive line has been middling at best his entire time in Miami. I think now that he has Teron Armstead, that could be a massive feather in his cap in terms of just having some more time in the pocket. Maybe their offense evolves a little bit from that pop gun, quick half step drop to throw in less than 2 seconds. Maybe they actually allow him to throw the ball down the field because they have faith in the offensive line for him to have the time to throw down the field. I think a lot of people saw that offense and they're like, oh, this is an indictment on his arm strength. This means he doesn't have the arm strength to throw deep balls. Maybe it was an indictment on the offensive line and the fact that they didn't have confidence that he was going to have time to stand back there, allow those plays to develop and make a play. Because he has the improv skills and the athleticism to run around and make a play, but you don't want him doing that every single play. You want him doing that if the play gets off script. You don't want to snap the ball and know this play's going off script because our offensive line sucks. So I think it's a fair take. I think Mac Jones was 13th in passing yards last year. I think it's fair to say that Tua in the right system, which obviously he's been in for years now with added weapons, I think he could have a better statistical season. And I think ultimately Bills Mafia is underselling Tua. Yeah, sure, he's not Josh Allen. I think we can all admit he's not the creature that Josh Allen is, but he's better than we give him credit for.
Yeah, and it's almost like I've started to feel bad for Tua, I guess, because it seems like even it's getting to a point where not only the fan base, but his own teammates are defending him for what seems like nothing. It's like they're making up this noise in their own minds to defend Tua. And we're all like, what are you guys talking about? Like, nobody's sitting here constantly thinking and bashing Tua on a day-to-day basis as much as at least they seem to think people are. And it's growing this enigma in which the public wants to see Tua fail because they want the team. They want, Tyreek to be proven wrong. They want, the fan base to be upset. It's like, and Tua's done nothing. It's not like he's come out and said anything controversial. I mean, I think he said, was it him that said the NFL is easy? Like, early on in his career, I think his first season.
I don't remember. That might have been him.
He said something along those lines. It might have been Justin Fields, but irregardless, he's never really said anything to piss me off or bother me. It's like he just gets this horrible rap.
He does.
Because the fan base just is so hypersensitive. I honestly just feel bad.
Yeah, it is kind of funny how they are hypersensitive in that way. But I mean, let's be honest, we are that way in some points.
Yes.
When people ridicule Josh Allen, it's, oh my God, up in arms everyone gets when anyone critiques Josh Allen in any way. But I think it is funny when you talk about like the bulletin board material that they're all going for, like creating a problem that isn't actually there. I mean, there is something to that. I mean, we heard, like, if anyone's watched The Last Dance, like Michael Jordan made up stuff about opponents the night before games just to get pissed off and get motivated to play a better game. It's part of sports. You got to be competitive in that way. And if there's nothing bad to say, make something bad up so you get motivated to play better. I don't know if that's necessarily what they're doing. It might be a mix of the two things, some sensitivity and some competitiveness with some bulletin board material. But yeah, either way, the whole Tua thing, it's hilarious. Like how much they all have to defend him when they just shouldn't have to. They really shouldn't. He's a target for whatever reason. Probably because it's been tank for Tua for like 7 years now, and he's just like not that amazing.
Yep.
So that's probably where it's stemming from. But either way, he's got a target on his back, and it's a lot of pressure.
Oh yeah, I mean there are quarterbacks in this. Every player in the NFL has pressure on their shoulders for one reason or another. But there are a select number of quarterbacks specifically that have a ton of pressure on their shoulders, and I want to revisit that in a minute, actually, since we're just kind of rolling on tangents right now. I was going to talk about the Tyreek comments because I don't know if you saw the podcast or at least some of the comments he did make.
Just one clip, but yeah, paraphrase for me if you can.
Yeah, so basically he was saying how, you probably saw the tidbit where he said Tua is more accurate than Patrick Mahomes.
Yes.
He went on to say things like, Tua Tagovailoa, or what did he say? He said the Chiefs didn't utilize him correctly. And he was upset when, that game where he went like for over 200 yards in the first quarter against the Bucs. And then like the game after that, he only had like 5 targets for 40 yards or something like that. And he was upset about that. What else did he say? He said something else too that was just like, what are you talking about, dude? Oh, he said he wants teams to feel, he wants teams to be fearful of him more so than Patrick Mahomes. Like he was saying how, teams would go, Patrick Mahomes is not going to struggle per se next season without him, but you're going to see, a little bit of a difference, I guess was the point he was trying to allude to. I don't know. I thought he was kind of talking full of himself a little bit. As great as he is, he was a little off his rocker.
I don't know how much content you've consumed of his outside of that, but everything I've seen of him off the field, he is that. He is that guy. He is that overconfident, borderline cocky character. And you want that, but there is a tipping point. There is a boiling point where it becomes too much and you're putting too much of a target on your back and all of that stuff that I was just talking about. But he has a point when it comes to, I want teams to fear me more than my quarterback, because he is an otherworldly talent. His speed is truly devastating to defenses. You have to respect it. And by doing that, you leave other wide receivers open. But exactly, Jason, like there is arrogance to that. And you don't want to draw that kind of attention to your team. You don't want to make everything about me and then have the team feel that in any sort of way, especially if you aren't winning as much. Because you could do that and get away with it in KC because you're winning all the time. But I mean, if the Dolphins are barely hanging on to a 500 record, it doesn't look as good to be saying these kind of things. So I understand, obviously, he's coming off, I mean, every reason to be arrogant. He has all the reasons in the world to be arrogant, but it could change very quickly for him if he doesn't see W's at the end of games. It's just different. And everything you say doesn't hold as much weight. And it's why guys from small market bad teams don't have loud mouths, but you hear about it more from those teams that are winning games.
Oh yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's, with that last part, especially, Tyreek Hill is going to have to, the Dolphins aren't only going to have to carry their own weight to back up Tyreek Hill's claims, but Tyreek Hill's going to have to carry his own weight. And he kind of talks about, like I said, he was alluding to the fact that you're going to see a difference with Patrick Mahomes without me on the field. I don't think he's considering the fact that he himself is going to see a difference with his play, his production without Patrick Mahomes. He kind of just is expecting this translation from Mahomes to Tua with a completely different system, completely different head coach, different weapons around him. I mean, he's going from a system that was so pass heavy, so focused on improvisation, trying to stretch the field. Like, this is not what the Dolphins are going to do. The Dolphins are going to be RPO quick. Like you mentioned, they're bringing a lot of running back bodies. They're probably going to try to keep the ball on the ground. Mike McDaniels comes from the 49ers. You know what they're all about. It's like, this is going to be a completely different environment. And Tyreek Hill, in my opinion, is not going to be putting up. He'll be a lot more of a receptions guy more than a yardage guy. I think this time around. And same, he's going to be better than the better version of Jalen Waddle. That's the way I think they're going to work off of each other. I'm just very quick, trying to get them open, trying to get them in space. But the big plays, I don't think those are going to be much of a thing anymore for Tyreek Hill. He'll have his breakouts where he, runs a quick slant or a bubble screen and he takes it, but he's not going to have those plays where he's deep down the field and Tua's heaving it, because that's just not the offense he's going to be a part of.
Right. Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. Obviously, they've got a lot of weapons this offseason. Obviously, getting Tyreek Hill. I love Chase Edmonds. I love that get for them. Well, I hate it as a Bills fan, but I love Chase Edmonds, the player. So it'll be very interesting to see how that offense evolves. Like you said, Mike McDaniel is from San Francisco. That is his type of offense, learning under Kyle Shanahan. You got to imagine it's going to be a lot of zone runs, a lot of run heavy stuff and RPOs. Like you said, it's going to be probably some stuff that Tua liked from the last regime and a lot of the stuff that Mike McDaniel liked during his time in San Francisco, and some sort of marriage in the middle. And does that mean more deep passing, or does that mean more West Coast RPO offense? And I think it's probably going to lean towards RPO West Coast offense, and you'll probably get some shot plays here or there, because let's be honest, the threat of Waddle, Hill, and Gesicki, that's a lot of speed. That's a lot of speed, and you gotta respect it. So they have different creative ways that they could do that. And having that speed means the play doesn't have to develop as long. It doesn't take as long for that play to develop. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how the Dolphins do this year, because Bills fans always just downplay how good they're going to be because of how loud and how sensitive Miami fans are. But let's be honest, they've made some really good additions this offseason, and they're probably going to be the second best team in the division, and they really could put up a fight against the Bills this year.
Yeah, if we're not careful, the Dolphins have gotten to a point where they have enough talent to actually get us. We've been in tighter games with the Dolphins, but our talent has come into play where we've actually, flicked the switch later on in the third or the fourth quarter, and we're like, oh shit, yeah, maybe we should actually play football now and put these guys into the ground. If we, let them hang around, this Dolphins team probably is not going to let that opportunity slip. We're going to have to play our best football, obviously against every team we play against. With the Dolphins in specifics, this whole, squish the fish thing where we go out and destroy them under Josh Allen's reign every single game, that's just not going to hold up by itself. We're going to have to be on our high alert as often as possible against this team. And you mentioned all that speed and all those weapons. They also added Raheem Mostert in the backfield. He's one of the fastest running backs in the NFL. If that guy can stay healthy, I think he is one of the better, home run threats out of the backfield. So the Dolphins really could be putting together a regime that could be dangerous not only to us but the rest of the AFC.
Yes.
But anyway, the next question that I had on my mind was kind of alluding back to how Patrick Mahomes was going to, you might notice the difference without Tyreek Hill. I think one of the biggest knocks, and even Justice himself, he's a big proponent of Patrick Mahomes being brought up with the golden spoon, right? He's had, one of the best head coaches in NFL history right next to him. He had Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. He was brought up behind Alex Smith. I think this season now, obviously with Tyreek Hill removed, he's got an opportunity to separate himself. In my opinion, he's the best quarterback in the NFL already. But now he's got an opportunity to disregard, to kind of remove an entire narrative that people hold against him and really start to separate himself if he's able to produce at the same level he was before without Tyreek Hill. So I think this is a prime opportunity for Pat.
I agree. That's very well put. Yeah, I think Justice has a point with that take, where he came into the league, a lot of people are thrown right into the fire with really bad teams, and you're just sink or swim. We're going to develop you now. We're going to evaluate you now, even though you don't have weapons around you. He got the luxury to sit behind a professional, a true professional like Alex Smith in a good offense with great coaching, all of that stuff. It's a very good take from Justice. But now, like you said, it's a piggyback one good take off of another. Yeah, now it's finally put up or shut up. I mean, he doesn't have as many weapons. It's coming to the point where this team has to be worse around you because we're finally paying you what you're worth. You're not on that rookie contract anymore. Everything around you is going to get worse, and you have to elevate the play of everyone around you rather than everyone around you elevating your level of play. And not to say that happened a ton with him, because let's be honest, Patrick Mahomes is a fantastic quarterback. Like you said, I agree with you. He is the top quarterback in the NFL, but he did get a lot of silver spoon. Everything around you is perfect. The scheme is perfect. All of that stuff. It made life so much easier for him. But now it is finally time for him to show that he can do it. And I think he can. I think the additions that they made are very interesting. I think more than anyone, it's put up or shut up for Mecole Hardman. He has just there have been flashes of, wow, this guy could be the next Tyreek Hill. And now it's like, okay, are you going to be the next Tyreek Hill? Because you kind of have to show it now. I think the Juju signing is interesting. I think Marquez Valdes-Scantling is a very sneaky ad. He's someone that works with, what the changing landscape of the NFL is, where, a lot of defenses are defending with two high safeties. And if you bring a power slot guy like Juju and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, you bring in two guys that can block really well on run plays, but you're kind of mismatching the defense in terms of 11 personnel, and it makes it really easy for you to run downhill because you have good blocking wide receivers like we have in Gabe Davis. And I think Juju and Scantling are very similarly in that mold. So I think that could be interesting for their offense and how they may want to tweak it and get a little bit less pass heavy and kind of go against the grain of where the NFL is going, to kind of be zigging when everyone's zagging, for a better term. And of course they got Sky Moore. I mean, anyone who listened to anything draft this offseason heard about Sky Moore. Like, Sky Moore was a draft darling this offseason. I loved him, but obviously he's got to prove it now. He played at Western Michigan, it's a MAC school. They didn't have great opponents. So it's really time for him to show that he can compete at this level of competition. So it'll be very interesting to see how Patrick Mahomes is elevating the play of everyone around him now that the team has to get worse around him now that he's getting paid.
Yep. I mean, you nailed so many great points there. And you mentioned, they brought in these, bigger, beefier wide receivers that are going to be able to get dirty to open up the run game for the Kansas City Chiefs, which has not been fantastic. Even last year, I think they started to somewhat shift away from the pass heavy scheme that we're so used to them seeing. They were trying to establish the run a little bit more. And, as you mentioned, when they're trying to, everybody else is zigging and they're trying to zag, I would argue that the Chiefs were, one of the teams originally to really start the pass heavy, pass every down, just destroy you, with the deep ball. They were that team to originally kind of start that. And the NFL primarily up until I would say 2017, 2018 was that, ground game prominent. You don't really see quarterbacks passing for as many yards, before as they do now. And now that's kind of shifting. The Chiefs were one of the teams that I think really started that under Andy Reid. And now maybe they're going to try and shift away from that as everybody's trying to shift into it. So you make a very good point. And another wide receiver that I think we both share the same kind of love for is Justin Ross, the Clemson wide receiver. I mean, that guy, I want him. Unfortunately, he went to the Chiefs, but I want him so bad to be successful. So bad.
Anytime there's like a medical reason that someone falls in the draft, you just feel for them. Same thing with Trey Smith last year, who they got in the 6th round. Like, that was someone I wanted the Bills to draft, and I understood. Sure, there were medical concerns, but like, I love his tape. I love everything I've heard about him as a human being. I love all of this stuff. And there's so much talent here. So I want to see them succeed. I don't want to see them like lose all of this money on their rookie deal because people are scared of their medical history. Even though they're so good at football, they're just objectively good at football, but you don't know what you're investing in, and you don't know the longevity of that investment and subsequently the return on that investment. So it's understandable, but yeah, Justin Ross, it really stings to say I hope he pans out because obviously, like, from a human level, like, I want it to pan out. He was electric with Trevor Lawrence at Clemson, both of their freshman seasons, I believe. They were just absolutely electric. Dude is a contested catch machine. He's a big body. He has some nuance to his route running. He certainly has some areas that he's going to need to shore up. He's not the most athletic dude in the world in terms of like straight line speed or agility, but he knows how to get it done within his body type. Probably, I don't want to say a good comp is T. Higgins, but it's kind of it's in that vein where it's like he's not an uber athletic guy, but he's bigger than you. So he knows how to work with that and win with that strength and mitigate his weaknesses. So it'll be very interesting to see if he pans out. And yeah, I am rooting for him. I really am. It's honestly in the same vein as like Josh Gordon. When Josh Gordon was signed for the Chiefs, like I was rooting for him, like biting my tongue rooting for him because he's on the Chiefs. But like, I want to see Josh Gordon pan out the same way I want to see Justin Ross pan out, the same reason I want to see Trey Smith pan out, because some of those things just keep happening. And it's like, I feel like it's unfair to the player, and I want it to pan out for them.
I mean, Trey Smith was what I think a 15-game starter. I mean, he
was fantastic.
I mean, and you said 6th round, right? I believe it was something late like that. You would like to think that now they're getting Justin Ross undrafted. They undrafted. That's the part that really blows my mind. Undrafted. We saw what the Chiefs did with they hit on a number of draft picks in 2020. I think their last 2 years of draft classes have been absolutely phenomenal.
Outstanding.
It's a little premature to say now, of course, because we haven't seen any of the 2022 draft class play yet. But, every single pick is just like knocked out of the park. Creed Humphrey, they deserve all the credit in the world for that selection. Nick Bolton has panned out to be a 13, 14-game starter for them after he officially took over a starting role. The Chiefs have been killing it. And something that I was talking about earlier on in the offseason after their draft class for 2022, it's like, even though they lost Tyreek Hill, they have been building, even privy to losing Hill, they've been building for that future. And they have a lot of young pieces to just pick up right where they left off once the rest of the AFC is done bullying and buying as much talent as they can. So I still think the Chiefs, and on top of the fact that they will still be competitive this year. So what did they really lose? That's really the big question.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are getting a little premature with like, oh, the Chiefs aren't even going to make the playoffs, or like people are really, really hammering this idea that Tyreek Hill is going to do a massive dip to their production. And I think it's going to be an impact, but I still think the Chiefs are going to have a great year. I think more than anything, the difficulty of them succeeding this year is going to be the success of everyone else in their division and how much that division got more competitive this offseason. Obviously, with Devontae Adams going to the Raiders, everything the Chargers did this year, from Khalil Mack to J.C. Jackson, the way they drafted. I always love what the Chargers do from a personnel standpoint. But either way, that division got better. So I think it's less to do with the Chiefs getting worse and more to do with their competition in the division getting better. I didn't even mention Russell Wilson, obviously, going to the Broncos.
Yeah, definitely. And, that will be a division that will be, I think that's probably the most exciting division in football.
It'll be
I think this is going to be one of the most entertaining years of football we've seen in a couple of years now. Obviously, last year was extremely entertaining. Coincidentally, the same year they partnered up with sportsbooks, but okay, we can get into that on another day. But so we were starting with recent events, and 46 minutes later, we went off onto 16 different tangents. So let's try to pan back onto that. And the most recent news, somehow we started with Deshaun Watson and got all the way here, but we will go to the Jordan Poyer signing, or not signing, but his attendance in minicamp. What do you think that means for Jordan Poyer's future, if anything at all?
Firstly, I think it's great. I think it's great that he's there. I think it's great that he understands two things: the importance of being there to the locker room, the importance of what it means to his teammates to be there, the importance it means to his coaching staff, and to himself, being ready for the season. If an extension gets done, having that mini camp done, building the camaraderie with the new additions, all of that little stuff that you don't think about when it comes to the player performing on the field, building that chemistry with your teammates, all of that stuff. I think it's great that he acknowledged the importance of that and he showed up. Secondly, obviously the money side of things, understanding like with the new CBA, you just don't want to miss mandatory stuff. It's going to make your wallet lighter. So if you're trying to get more money in a contract, you might as well make this money where you can already make it, or at least not lose it in the opportunity cost of it. But either way, I don't think this means a lot in terms of the contract. I think everyone's been doing too much analyzing of it because of the nature of this dead point in the offseason. It's not much to analyze. So you got to overtalk some, get deeper on really shallow topics because there's not much to talk about. So there's a shallow topic here with Jordan Poyer and everyone's getting really deep into it. But I don't know if there's that much to get into where, sure, I actually think Jordan Poyer is going to sign an extension. I don't think it's going to break the bank, but I think he's going to get paid like probably, I don't want to say like he deserves because he's still probably not going to get paid what he deserves if he signs an extension. But I think he's going to get paid what he deserves relative to his age, if that makes sense.
Totally. And that's the big conversation right now. And, I, under the wrongful assumption last night, I talked to Nate from Circling the Wagons, and he was like, it kind of means nothing. And he thinks that there's no way he plays under his current contract. And he believes that he's almost kind of leaning toward, from what it sounded like, Jordan Poyer perhaps not being a Buffalo Bill by the start of the season. And he does get shipped out because of the obviously not being able to come to a contract agreement. I'm not sure where I stand on that, but he definitely opened my eyes. And I was, I saw that Jordan Poyer was attending, and I wasn't educated enough to realize that, for one, he kind of had to, because like you mentioned, he would be getting fined up the ass. So he absolutely had to join in on the fun. But also just the fact that, Jordan Poyer is still not a lock to be getting back here. And I think, once I did start to really pay attention and, do a little bit of my own homework, it's going to come down to what I think is Jordan Poyer's decision to chase the ring or chase the money. And he's going to find himself in that situation where, like you mentioned, it's going to be a fair deal from the Bills' perspective, whatever we offer him in relative to his age. But I can easily see a guy like Jordan Poyer, hiring an agent like Drew Rosenhaus, saying, I don't care how old I am. I know what value I bring to my football team. And I'm going to, make sure I'm compensated for for what I know I can bring to the table. So, and I do think that Micah Hyde, I did that again. Micah Fitzpatrick this time. That signing doesn't hurt the Bills necessarily, but I do think it could potentially bolster up Jordan Poyer's perspective on the whole thing and make everybody, or make him think that, you know, he does deserve that big contract.
Yeah, I think there are a few albatrosses now in the safety contract realm. You know, you look at Jamal Adams, like that was sitting at top the number one for way too long. And then obviously Minkah Fitzpatrick gets now number one AAV contract money. And that's well deserved. I think, I don't know if he's necessarily the best safety in the league, but he's at the cross section of best and youngest. So he then deserves to get paid like it. So I don't know if it completely changes how much money Poyer is going to get, but it probably gives him like a couple 100,000 more or something of leverage in terms of that. But ultimately, I really think he's going to get signed. I think we're all blowing this out of proportion. I think being talked about the importance of Jordan Poyer and how important he is to the Buffalo Bills, how important he is to this rebuild that they had, and how important he is to Micah Hyde and how they work together. Like without Jordan Poyer, are we really getting the same Micah Hyde and vice versa? They work so well together. I think, look, sure, he could just be showing up for appearances. Sure, he could just be showing up to make it seem like he's not a bad person and he's not holding anything against anyone, and then thus making it easier for him to get traded to another team and another team having interest in him. But I think the Bills know what they have in him, and I think they know that they don't want to let him walk because that tightens the Super Bowl window. It makes that Super Bowl window smaller. So I think ultimately they will pony up, and ultimately I think Jordan Poyer will see that it's his best chance to, one, get paid, and two, get a chance at the ring. I think it's the cross section of the two. I don't think he's going to pass up that opportunity. And on the other side of things, I don't think Brandon Beane's going to pass up that opportunity.
Totally. And something I didn't even consider, which, you know, once again, you brought up, which was a solid point, is Jordan Poyer, from his point of view, he has to realize, he has to have enough self-awareness to know that not only is he getting up there in age, but his play is, you know, it's bolstered with Micah Hyde next to him. You know, no safety is as good as those two have been by themselves, right?
Right.
You know, even guys like Justin Simmons, you know, he's one of the top safeties in the NFL, but I can't even imagine how good he would be if he had the type of chemistry that Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer do, if he had somebody like that next to him. Right. So I think Jordan Poyer has enough self-awareness to realize that he does want to play with Micah Hyde, and that's where the best of him is going to come out. But yeah, I would like to think that Jordan Poyer, the extension is going to happen, and he'll be in a Bills uniform come week one. I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah.
I think that was about the last piece of recent news I had on my mind. Well, then the Micah Hyde. I did it again. The Minkah Fitzpatrick contract signing. I don't know why I keep doing that. But so the other conversation that I was thinking about bringing up was so the New England Patriots are a team that, you know, everybody expects consistency from on a year-to-year basis. And in relation to the Buffalo Bills, we obviously know the history with us, the New England Patriots. But I think this season is a season of, you know, potential disaster for the New England Patriots. This is a year where they're coming off of a 9-8 season. 9-8? Did they go 9-8? Yes. They went 9-8, I believe. Went on like a 7-game win streak. They were actually 6th in points for by some God-given miracle. 2nd in points against. They had a really good year for Mac Jones, a rookie quarterback, being under center. So you think things can only go up, right? But after the offseason they had, you know, even after the way their year ended, they lost 4 of 5, including the wild card game, and got destroyed. And they did nothing in the offseason to really make up for the losses that they endured. So I'm thinking this, you know, 2022 is going to be a rough stretch for them, you know, for the 17-game period of time. And they're going to be playing offenses that outmatch them tremendously. And unless their defense can stay extremely stout like they were last year, somehow without J.C. Jackson, their offense is just going to get outpaced, and they'll be losing games relatively often.
Yeah, I'll talk out of both sides of my mouth on this one because I do agree with you. But I will say is Belichick is always going to get more from less. He's always going to get more from players that aren't necessarily the best in the league. Even when you think the player matchups aren't there from a personnel standpoint, Belichick's going to find a way to scheme them up in a way where they're competitive enough to hang in games. So I think they'll win more games than they probably deserve to. I think they'll be solid. That being said, I think the Jets got better this offseason. I don't know if I can say the same about the Patriots. I don't know if that means the Patriots are the 4th team in the AFC East, but I think they're going to have to fight to be 3rd or 2nd. Like, they're really going to have to fight. Whereas last year they were fighting to be 2nd or 1st.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a big difference for them. I think obviously the overspending of 2 off seasons ago is now catching up to them. The fact that they overpaid for players like Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne was good, but they still probably objectively overpaid for him. Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, who's a great player again, but they still probably overpaid for him a little bit. Either way, that's a lot of spending, and it makes it harder to spend in the next year. Furthermore, are we sure that Mac Jones is going to get better than what he already is? Because no. I think Mac Jones was great last year. And I think another example of people seeing Mac Jones compared to Josh Allen, and they're just like, oh, this guy sucks. Like, let's just keep pushing him down. Mac Jones was good. And I think he will be a good NFL quarterback. I think he already is a good NFL quarterback. But my main concern with Mac Jones is I think he's 95% of what he's going to be. I don't know how much better he can really be from what he was last year. And that's not necessarily a terrible thing. It's not a good thing by any means. But what does that say for the growth of your team? Because it tells me that you're going to need to surround him with better talent if you want to get better on offense, because you're not expecting him to grow more than 5% of what he currently is, which is why you saw investments in Devontae Parker this offseason, little things like that, getting guys like they draft Tyquan Thornton to get some more speed, because obviously they overpaid for Nelson Aguilar and that was their only speed option on the team. So you got to find speed at a cost control, and they reached to do that. Yeah. So the biggest thing with the Patriots is I can't sit here and say they got any better, but they still have great coaching. And that is all to say this without knowing who their offensive play caller is.
Yeah.
Right?
But, yeah.
And how it might be Matt Patricia. But either way, I think they'll get somewhere near 500. They could squeak out 1 or 2 more. They could lose 1 or 2 less. But I think it's going to be in the ballpark of 500, which, it's music to my ears hearing them being mediocre. But I have Pats fans because I went to UMass for college. But mediocrity is not fun. And we can all speak from experience on that. Mediocrity is not fun.
Oh, no, not a chance is mediocrity fun. And they, they're in a spot where they, like you mentioned, they will be good enough to the point where they won't be, a 1 or 2, 3-win team, but they'll be right in the middle, just competitive enough. Mac Jones is, somebody that deserves a lot of credit. A rookie quarterback had no type of weapons to receive. Kendrick Bourne was his best receiving option, and I think that says a lot for, the season he had. Hunter Henry was solid, but I don't think he was utilized as a receiver as much as he could have been for Mac Jones. So he deserves a lot of credit for the year he had. But like you said, how much more are we going to get out of him? I think he's pretty much near his ceiling, especially athletically. He's not going to be getting any more.
What athletic. I will say is I think people downplay his athleticism.
You think so?
And by saying that, it's not saying he's going to scramble and improvise and make plays, but I think his pocket mobility is good in the same way that Tom Brady's pocket mobility is good, where it's like he's not breaking tackles or juking guys that are about to sack him like Josh Allen does, but he's sliding up in the pocket or sliding left or right to make a passing window better, stuff like that. Like, he's very savvy the way he moves around in the pocket. And I guess the best way I can put it is, sure, he's not overly athletic, but he knows how to play with the tools that he has. He doesn't play outside of his realm of capabilities. So I think that kind of athleticism is what I'm speaking to.
No, that's a very good way to put it. Mac Jones, there were a couple times where we couldn't get Mac Jones in the win bowl. He was able to escape the pocket, and he was able to, get outside and try to get a potential throw. But I think he ran a couple on this, I remember.
Yeah, exactly.
But Mac Jones, his ceiling for me, I would say, is a Kirk Cousins type of ceiling, but I'm not sure if he'll be. I think Kirk Cousins is a pretty solid deep passer, so I'm not sure Mac Jones will ever be that kind of quarterback as far as his deep passing
I think
ability goes.
what you're saying it's near that, like a Kirk Cousins, low level Matt Ryan, like not high level Matt Ryan, like more towards what we're getting right now of Matt Ryan, Jimmy Garoppolo, that kind of range of where we are right now in quarterback play. Those three guys, somewhere in that ballpark, is where I feel like Mac Jones will end up. And that's not, I mean, that's still a starting quarterback.
Totally. I mean, well, interesting question. Hypothetically, you're going into next season, right? Trying to win a Super Bowl or die. Mac Jones is your quarterback, or would you roll with Baker Mayfield as your quarterback? I think they kind of fit in a similar niche now.
So are you asking this like if I'm Patriots GM and this is 2023, right? And Baker Mayfield he's already hit free agency, so you get to give him whatever contract you think he's deemed most valuable for. In that case,
yeah, we'll go with that.
Okay. I still think I'm going Mac Jones. Okay. And if it's mostly for continuity purposes, I think that's really the driving point towards this. It's less about the contract and more about continuity. You know what you're getting with him. You've grown with him. You've gone through all the bumps and bruises with him. You understand what he's good at in the system, what he's not great at with the system, what he likes, what he doesn't like, what kind of wide receivers make him best, things like that. You don't want to restart the clock. All of it in a vacuum, though, like remove all that stuff. Just like, who would I rather have at quarterback? I'd rather have Baker Mayfield, but it's tough to evaluate in a vacuum. I think it makes more sense for the Patriots not to restart that clock and see through this entire timer that is Mac Jones.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, especially from a Patriots perspective, I think Mac Jones was more than good enough. I'm not sure how many quarterbacks, outside of the top 11, 12, obviously, I would be taking over Mac Jones at this point. Like, the Kirk Cousins or the Jimmy Garoppolos or the Tua Tagovailoas. I mean, there's a lot of, middle of the pack quarterbacks right now where Mac Jones fits in. But for the Patriots' sake, if they hypothetically had the options of those guys to pick from, I think I'm still rolling with Mac. I mean, I think, he showed enough in his first season. Nonetheless, we will continue to harp on enough to be a solid starting quarterback going forward. But for Mac Jones, yeah, I just don't think he's got much left athletically. He'll be about this good for the remainder of his career, I'd say. He'll get better. He'll get smarter, but not much more physically capable.
And that's exactly where I come, like when I'm saying he's 95% of what he is. I think everything else is going to be the cerebral side of things. He's going to learn more about anticipation and how defenses are defending him and how to pivot off of that. All of those little things, the mental games to the NFL, I think that's what's going to make him better. And it's going to allow him to, once again, play within himself and the tools that he has. And yeah, it's not exciting. It's like, oh, look at this guy with a low ceiling, but there's consistency there. And I mean, that's why, you don't like it, but Teddy Bridgewater has held jobs for so long because you know what you're going to get. So obviously it's early with Mac Jones too. Like we're talking about it, kind of like extrapolating as if he's already put 3 years of good film out there, but he's trending in a direction where he seems like he's just going to be a consistent guy for the next 3 years through his rookie contract anyways.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of guys where, we look at guys like Trevor Lawrence who are in a position where obviously he was held back by the Jacksonville Jaguars, of course. Severely. He was in a position to not necessarily be successful. But, I would argue that Mac Jones at this point in time is giving you a good enough chance to win where I think you're taking a risk with Trevor Lawrence at the moment, I guess, depending on the situation. But Mac Jones, presented enough and put enough, on the table where, comparatively to this so-called generational prospect, he propped himself right up next to him. And Mac Jones probably gets eaten alive if the roles were reversed. But nevertheless.
Right. That's actually a great point, too, because, like, if you put Trevor Lawrence in the Patriots system where that offense is more ready to win right away, like Trevor Lawrence, we would be talking about him like that generational talent. But you throw Mac Jones into that offense that is Jacksonville, and he probably looks like probably looks like Gardner Minshew, which sure wasn't awful. He actually showed some glimpses of some fun stuff, but how much can you rely on that? And I think that's obviously why it's a little different now, because this is all hypothetical, but you flip the script and you take that chance if you're Jacksonville, because you know what that ceiling could be with Trevor Lawrence, and you're not getting even close to that with Mac Jones. Like, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Objectively, who had the better season? It was Mac Jones. It was 100% Mac Jones. But you watch the film, who's the better quarterback? Who's the guy that has better traits? Who's the guy that could be a top 5 quarterback in the league? You're not saying Mac Jones. You're saying Trevor Lawrence, but he still has to realize that potential.
Yep, definitely. I could not agree more. And, with that all being said, I wanted to ask another question, and we kind of briefly touched on this earlier, and that was the question of which quarterbacks have the most pressure on their shoulders going into 2022. Because there are a number of guys, and obviously everybody has pressure to an extent, but there are a number of guys where, it's kind of like this year's the year to prove it for them. This is the year where they have to show that they are worth it to their franchise, to their fan base, and that they're worth having the starting position that they hold right now. Who's the first guy that comes to your mind when you think of pressure?
I have a lot that I'm looking at right now. All right, I'll go with the first one that I saw. This is not necessarily ranked. Russell Wilson.
Okay.
Russell Wilson, because he came off a bad season. Honestly, like 2 not great seasons from him. Obviously an injury. And now he's in a new setting. And he's in a very competitive environment that is the AFC West. He has to prove that he is everything that the Broncos traded for. And that they didn't lose that deal. And he's not on the wrong side of 30. All of those things. All the proverbial sayings of, trading for an old quarterback. But I think he has a lot of pressure this year to live up to all the hype that he has, and deservedly so, from his early moments in the league. But I think he has a lot of pressure, obviously changing conferences, getting into the objectively more competitive conference in the NFL right now. So I think he has a lot of pressure on him. Who's the other one? Matt Ryan, these are going to be mostly team changes, but like the Colts, another team they are roster ready to win now, but they've been quarterback play away from winning. And obviously Carson Wentz wasn't holding them back all the time last year, but there were like 5 throws a game where you're like literally slamming your head against the wall and you're like, what are you doing, Carson? So if you get some more consistency in that regard from Matt Ryan, and he's shown that at times, and obviously we know what the Colts offensive line has done in the past few years. Like, they're outstanding. If he has all that and it all comes together, what can the Colts be? And I think there is a lot of pressure on him for the expectations of, okay, we just went and got this guy. Is he going to be what it's worth? Ironically, those first 2 are both guys that came from other situations. Now the next ones I have 3 more. I have 3 more. Next one is Joe Burrow.
Okay.
Joe Burrow.
Joe
Burrow, I think, has a lot of pressure on him, not because of like what he can't do, not because he has like something to prove, so to speak, but I guess it is something to prove. Sustainability. Can he do it time and time again? Now that people have tape on what he likes to do, what the Cincinnati offense likes to do, how they do stuff. We saw this with Josh Allen. All of his stuff from 2020 and the success that he had in 2020, it was kind of rocky at the start of 2021. There were good moments, but it was rocky. There were moments that offense was kind of stalling out, and it was like, we know you're better than this. What's going on? How is Joe Burrow going to pivot and counterpunch to the counter punches that the defenses are throwing at him? I think he has all the potential in the world to do it. I think of him as, I don't know if he's a top 5 quarterback, but he's certainly, if he's not, he's like 6. It's tough. I'd have to like go through and look at it, but either way, if he's not, he's 6. So I think he's got to prove the sustainability that he can roll with the counter punches and throw some counter punches back. So I think that's going to be a critical one for him, because obviously he's a young guy with loads of talent, but can he do it sustainably? And I think he can, but it's time to prove it. 2 more. Derek Carr.
Yes.
Derek Carr's a fun one because now he has the weapon. He has Devontae Adams. He has no excuse now. He has Darren Waller and he has Devontae Adams. It should be loads of fun. I've always loved Derek Carr. The moment he got into the league, he was a lot of fun. He has the athleticism. He has the arm talent. He has the cerebral side of things. He has the leadership. The Raiders have always been like really hit or miss. They've been really hit or miss, really inconsistent. Now that he has some consistency in his weaponry, can he show consistency in leading that team to victory on a week-to-week basis? Obviously, another team in the AFC West, and that brings me to my last one, Justin Herbert, the wonder kid. Justin Herbert is just loads of potential. He is a physical athlete like Josh Allen, but he is a cerebral beast like Drew Brees. Can he put it all together now that the Chargers have invested so much in everything around him because he's on that rookie contract? It's that thing that I was talking about with Patrick Mahomes. You know, he's on that rookie contract. They have that time to invest everywhere else. Go get JC Jackson. Go get Khalil Mack. Go do everything you can in the draft to make this team as good as it can be while you have this window of him on a rookie contract and having all of this trust in who he can be and the potential of who he can become. Now he's got to show it again. He's got to do it again with added weapons on the offense and on the defense. And obviously, I think Brandon Staley's going to help that whole thing out. I really like what he's building. But there are a lot of guys with a lot of pressure. I left like Kyler Murray off of this list, but that's like you could do like a show on Kyler Murray. But no, I think the guys that are like changing teams actually have like the Matt Ryans and the Russell Wilsons, and then even like Derek Carr, who has new players coming to his situation. I think those ones are really interesting because when you're a fan base, like think about the expectations we had for the Buffalo Bills the second Stephon Diggs came to town. You know, it changes everything. The way you're thinking about how the season is going to go, it just changes everything. So that's why I think those guys have more pressure than anyone else.
Oh, I mean, every single quarterback you named. I mean, some of the guys that you named weren't the guys that came to my head first, but you know, they rightfully have a ton of pressure on their shoulders as well. I really liked both the Joe Burrow and the Derek Carr. Those two guys that you mentioned. Joe Burrow for the same exact reasons. I, for one, I don't know if it was the show that I had you on for the Cave, or I don't remember the hot take I gave, but I said that Derek Carr, at one of the shows early on, I said, I think Derek Carr is better than Joe Burrow right now.
That might have been me. I think it was me.
It might have been. It very well might have been. But those two guys are guys that I'm very interested to see how, you know, Derek Carr adapts with the new expectations that he's going to be held to his name. But then Joe Burrow, you know, he's also got these high expectations that he's going to have to meet himself. And they're going to have to meet them in different ways. But at the end of the day, they're both going to be expected to play football at a high level. Joe Burrow, for one, because he just did, and Derek Carr, for another, because he's now got the team around him to do so. He's never had a defense, above 20th ranked in the NFL. And now they add Max Crosby. They have added Chandler Jones. They got Nate Hobbs in the secondary, who's been a very solid corner for them. You know, they're ready to go. And then, of course, Devontae Adams on the offensive side of the ball. I really think Derek Carr is going to prove everybody wrong. I can't wait. I could talk about
I love that.
Hours.
Yeah, I love Derek Carr. I really do.
He I don't know, like there's something about him. He brings like passion out of me, and I can give less of a shit. It's
funny too, because like as Bills fans and the vendetta that Josh Allen has against Derek Carr and the whole like Fresno State ordeal, like we probably shouldn't like Derek Carr so much, but I do. The way he came into the league and how he had success right away, and just I don't want to use the word spunk, but like that's what it is. Like he plays with that fire, that competitive. It's very similar to Josh Allen in a nature. He plays with that competitive fire. So yeah, it's fun to watch.
Oh yeah, it totally is. And he's, I mean, I did a whole like ordeal about my thoughts on Derek Carr. And if it was you that I had on when we had this conversation, I hope I'm not boring you with the same thing. But I think his best two receivers prior to Darren Waller, obviously being a tight end, I think it was like Amari Cooper and like Michael Crabtree. And, you know, Amari Cooper obviously is coming to himself with the Dallas Cowboys more so than he was with the Raiders. But then Michael Crabtree, I mean, he didn't have the best of help. Like, this is really his first time having the team around him to do, you know, what he may be able to do this year. So I'm excited to see that. But without rambling about that too much, there were a couple guys. So when I think of pressure on quarterback shoulders, my mind went in a completely different direction. You named a lot of guys that have a lot of they have a big reputation already. They've put a large body of work together, aside from Burrow and Herbert, to be fair. But these are other guys that that came to my mind. The first one that came to my mind was Jalen Hurts, for a similar reason to Derek Carr, almost. A guy that they are not sure of in Philadelphia. There was a point where I think he was talked about being benched, at some points throughout the season last year. They obviously never ended up doing so, but they bring in AJ Brown now. They have Devontae Smith. They have Dallas Goedert. I think Miles Sanders is underutilized, who is a tremendous weapon on that team.
Yeah.
They have the weapons. Now it's time for Jalen Hurts to take that next step. When it comes to quarterbacking and become a true quarterback, sit in the pocket, deliver throws downfield, hit Devontae Smith, who I think had a tremendous season individually. He just didn't get the opportunities, I guess, for lack of a better term. But he's a guy that immediately comes to my mind, because I think if he doesn't perform this year and put this team in a spot to be successful, he's going to be on the way out. And I mean, their defensive front is remarkable, absolutely remarkable. I cannot stress enough how scary it must be. And it always has been. I mean, now they have, they had Fletcher Cox to begin with. Now they have Hassan Reddick. I don't know if Ryan Kerrigan's still there, but they also got Jordan Davis as well, who's somehow almost double Fletcher Cox's size. I don't know if you saw a picture of Jordan Davis standing next to Fletcher Cox.
No.
But he makes Fletcher Cox look small. It's terrifying.
Wild. Yeah, that's wild.
So the Eagles are, they're ready to go. So if, he's not able to put the foot forward, I think he's going to be done. Another guy that came to my mind was Carson Wentz, similar to the other guys you named. Different situation. Didn't necessarily have success the year before. Now he's getting a new opportunity, which I really don't understand. But, he's another guy that if he doesn't perform now in Washington, his playing days, at least starting wise, might be coming to an end. Kirk Cousins was another guy that came to my mind as well. They just paid him that massive extension. Is he the guy for them? He puts up the stats every year, but the team doesn't win. And, who else can you point to? Obviously, the big argument is, quarterbacks, wins aren't a quarterback stat. And I completely am, a supporter of that theory. But eventually, at what point do you say this guy isn't winning us football games, so we're going to have to move on? They didn't decide that because they obviously extended him, but there's going to be a point where they're going to have to decide he's not the guy. And I think this is a big season for Kirk.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, those are the big 8 that you named. I really like the Burrow and the Carr as well. Oh man. So I think that was about all I had on my mind at the moment. Was there any other talking tangents or conversations you wanted to touch on, Kendall?
Not specifically, but the one thing that just popped into my brain after you brought up Kirk Cousins has me thinking about Ryan Tannehill. And because of just drafting Malik Willis, now there's inherently pressure on him because they just drafted someone where you can reset the clock on the quarterback position. So I think it's interesting. They obviously did so much to stay competitive. The Titans did. They did so much to stay competitive with that team. And obviously they were great this past year. They have great pieces still, but obviously they moved on from AJ Brown and they drafted Malik Willis. They're just in a very curious position with what is their vision for the future and how long of a leash does Ryan Tannehill have? Are they going to commit to tanking and riding with Malik Willis and just seeing what they have in him? And if it means losing, it means losing. But they have pieces where it doesn't really make sense to tank. So the Titans are in a very, very interesting spot right now. And it kind of goes back to Ryan Tannehill and everything that he's going to do this season. They extended him because they kept winning with him. And then they get rid of AJ Brown. So it makes the moves they did earlier look weird. But at the time, those moves they did earlier made sense because they were maximizing their success moving forward. But then the whole AJ Brown things happen and it makes everything look weird. But I'm very curious to see what the Titans are going to do this season and ultimately how Ryan Tannehill does, because he's been absolutely outstanding with the Titans, obviously relative to what he was doing with the Dolphins early on in his career. So it'll be interesting if this is truly the end for him, if his days are numbered. I don't think they necessarily should be, but the Titans drafted an insurance policy. So I think there is pressure on his shoulders. And it goes back to the whole mentoring comments that he made earlier in the offseason. But I don't think he's being an asshole or anything like that. I think people are reading into that a little much. But either way, I think the pressure is more on him just in the sense of he just has to continue what he's doing, but now kind of with lesser weapons. You know, that number one option now is Robert Woods. And I think as Bills fans, we all love Robert Woods and we think he's going to be a sneaky ad for him. But let's be honest, is Robert Woods your number one wide receiver? Are you really going to be happy about your offense funneling through Robert Woods and Treylon Burks, hoping that he is ready for NFL stuff day one? All that, it's all very interesting. I think the Titans are going to be an interesting team.
Yeah, that's a very good answer. When ranking quarterbacks, I put Kirk Cousins and Ryan Tannehill right next to each other. I think I had Kirk at 16 and Tannehill at 15. I think they're right in that same realm of dead center in the NFL right now. But they could either, I think their stock is probably dipping a little bit in terms of where their career is heading at the moment. And obviously, which I feel like we probably should mention with this conversation, Tua is somebody that has a lot of pressure on his shoulders too.
Yeah, he does. Like he should have came up with this. Yep, because he has new weapons now. Yep.
Yeah, he fits that mold perfectly. Tua does. But yeah, I mean, that was about all I had at the moment. Like I said, if you have any other closing thoughts, feel free to let me know. But I think we're good at the moment.
Yeah, no, I think we talked about a lot, man. Talking about the entire NFL is awesome. It really is. It's a breath of fresh air from content that's just Bills centric because, yeah, like we alluded to at the beginning, like there's only so much you can talk about with the Bills, especially during the offseason, after the draft, after free agency, all that stuff, just waiting for the season to happen. There's not much to break down, and it gets stale. So it's really refreshing to talk about everything happening outside of Buffalo and then bringing it back and saying how it impacts the Buffalo Bills. And while we didn't necessarily do that with everything here, I mean, anyone listening can do that on their own and see like, oh, okay, like, oh, the Titans being worse could be better for Buffalo and their chances, all of that kind of stuff. So it's really refreshing and it's really fun to do, talking about the entire NFL landscape.
Oh, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I love talking about the NFL as a whole because there are just so many. I mean, we did it on this show, so many tangents that open up on their own, and you can just talk and talk and talk. And there's always going to be conversation when talking about such a large landscape like we did tonight. And it was a very good time, Kendall. So I really appreciate you hopping on Homefield Advantage. It was a really good time. And for anybody in the comment section that did stop by, I appreciate you leaving a like, subscribing, doing whatever you may have done, whether you just stopped in and you viewed. We are very grateful for that as well. So thank you very much for stopping in. And that will be Homefield Advantage. We will be back next Wednesday. Hopefully Justice will be able to join us at that time. And I really appreciate you guys for stopping in. And I see you guys next week. Go Bills.